Welcome back to Mr. Speller's Math Tutorials. Today we're going to look at linear equation basics. Alright, let's get started. We're going to talk about linear equations, which are just equations of straight lines. And those equations have several forms. One of those forms is standard form. Well, with standard form, we have ax plus by is equal to c, where a, b, and c are real numbers. So let's, for example's sake, say that a is equal to 0. If a is equal to 0, well, we know that anything times 0 is 0, so we're left with by is equal to c. So let's write that here. And now let's solve for y. Well, to solve for y, we divide both sides by b. Those b's cancel, and we see that y is equal to the expression c over b. Now, if we were to write this using where we wanted the coordinate plane, or sorry, not the coordinate plane, if we want to write this with an ordered pair, that ordered pair would be 0 for the x value of a, and the y value we just said was c over b. Well, in this case, if c over b is positive or negative, all we have here is the equation of an horizontal line. So let's go ahead and draw that in. So here's our y-axis, and here is our x-axis. The value c over b, if it's positive, that means we'd have a point up here, and the line would go through that point. If c over b were negative, we'd have a point somewhere down here. And again, when we graph it, we'd have a horizontal line. We'd have a horizontal line that goes through that point there. Next, let's look at what happens if b is equal to 0. Well, if b is 0, we know anything times 0 is 0. So that means this term goes away. And we're left with ax is equal to c. Now, if we wanted to solve for x, we divide both sides by a. Those a's there cancel. And we're left with the expression x is equal to c over a. And this here is the equation of a vertical line. And if we wanted to write the ordered pair that vertical line, or one of the points that vertical line goes through, that's going to have a y value of 0, because we see that when b is 0, that means y here also has to be 0. And we just said that x is, whoops, I put that in the wrong order. X is the first part of the ordered pair, c over a, and then we see that y is going to be 0 because b times that y is 0. Now, if we were to graph this, again, we draw in our coordinate plane. All right, here's our y-axis going up and down, our x-axis left and right. If the expression c over a is positive, then that means we have a point here somewhere on the x-axis where it's positive, and we'd have a vertical line here. If c over a turned out to be negative, we'd have a point here on this side, somewhere along here. And again, we'd have a vertical line going through that. Right? What if c were equal to 0? Well, if c is equal to 0, we end up with something called a direct variation. All right? And with a direct variation, all that means is that the line that we draw is going to intersect at the origin of the coordinate plane. So here we have our x and y axes. Here is the origin. If the line that we draw has a positive slope, then that line would have to cross here at the origin. If that line had a negative slope, again, it would cross here at the origin. Now, of course, the steepness of the lines may change depending on the slope of the lines, but the line will still cross at the origin. Next, we're going to take a look at the slope-intercept form. All right, now we're going to start looking at the equation for the slope-intercept form. That equation is y is equal to mx plus b. Here we see the letter m, that stands for the slope. And we have the letter b, and that stands for the y-intercept. Now, if I were to draw in the coordinate plane to see what that looks like, let's just draw this here, our y-axis, and here's our x-axis. Well, for the b value, if the b value is positive, then we're going to be anywhere above this. This is the x-axis. Place that here. We're going to be above the x-axis, so we'd have a point, let's say, here. If the b value were negative, we'd be below the x-axis, and we could have a point, somewhere over here. So for example's sake, let's say that we had a positive slope. If we had a positive slope, the line could look like this. If the b value were positive, it could look like this if the b value were negative. Again, the steepness of this line changes based on the slope. If the slope were negative, we'd have lines going in the opposite direction. But again, they'd go through that same b value. So we could have something that looks like this, or we could have something that looks like this. Now, if we had to figure out what the slope was, we would we have an equation for m, and I'm going to save that equation for the next equation, which is going to be the point slope formula. Next, we're going to work here with the point slope formula, and that formula is y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times x minus x sub 1. Well, here the slope is still m, and then we have a point, and that point, I'm just going to call it P. It has the coordinates of x sub 1 comma y sub 1. In some situations, we'll have a second point. I'm going to call that point 2. So actually, I'm going to put a sub 1 here. So if we have point 2, P sub 2, that's going to have an x value of x sub 2 and a y value of y sub 2. Now, we could use these 2 points to figure out what the slope is. So in this case, we'd figure out that the slope is equal to the difference in y values divided by the difference of x values. So we could take y sub 1 from the first point and subtract it from y sub 2 of the second point and divide that quantity by the difference of the x values, which would be x sub 1 minus x sub 2. Or this can be rewritten in another form. And in that form, we can just switch the order in which we use the points. Here we're using the first point first. So now we're going to use the second point first. So we could also say y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And both of these refer to the value of m, or the value for the slope. And then all we have to do is just make a basic substitution, and that would give us the equation in point slope format. All right, well, this sums up this tutorial. If you like it, please like it. And as always, thank you for watching.